What's up, guys? It's Rey-Jay back with another video. And in this one, I wanted to break down what's happening with SPY, Tesla, Nvidia, the QQQ, and a couple of other tickers. I'm also going to talk about why tomorrow's going to be a very important day as the market's attempting to hold some key supports, which could lead us to remaining a lot more bullish. But the question remains, will we hold these supports and what data is going to be coming out? So I'll be talking about all of that in this video. But just know a couple of things. I'm firstly not a financial planner, so make sure you take nothing I say as financial advice whatsoever. Also, if you guys can, please check out my Webull link. If you deposit any amounts of money, you're guaranteed 12 free stocks. If you deposit $500, you're guaranteed 20. Deposit $2,000 more, you're guaranteed 40. The offer ends very soon in just 2 weeks. Anyways, now let's talk about what's happening with the market. So, the market had a very, very tricky trend day on Friday as we saw a lot of buyers stepping in, once again continuing to push the markets higher. Now, many people have been asking me, is it time to go short in the market? Is the market about to collapse? And the answer is basically what's happening is right now the charts remain bullish. And there's been no sign of a major rejection, so I wouldn't necessarily be too comfortable at shorting at too high levels like up here. So that does not necessarily mean the market's going to run forever. Of course, there is still going to be that possibility of us dipping, but there's no sign of it yet, so I can't turn too bearish yet, and we have to give the market more time to develop to see if that ends up coming. But as of right now, okay, the market remains bullish. If you want more information about how to kind of like trade this, especially as the market's pushing, where you guys can watch my previous video, the video before this one. Besides that, we just remain bullish straight up. So the question is now, what data is coming out for tomorrow? What's going to affect us, and how will this affect the charts? The first thing worth mentioning is the fact that for tomorrow, it's going to be Monday. There are no earnings coming up before market open, but then after the market closes, it's going to be all very, very minor data. And then for Tuesday, we have a couple of banks announcing earnings, not to mention Salesforce, so it's going to be kind of minor. Wednesdays when we have Dollar Tree and Foot Locker and a few more, and then Thursdays when we have Dollar General, TD Bank, and then many others out there, like lots of retail, and that's pretty much it. For the most part, very very minor earnings, nothing too crazy. For the economic calendar, however, I do want to call out the fact that at 9:45 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the S&P Global Manufacturing PMI report coming out, so watch that very carefully. There's going to be some volatility at that time. And then at 10 o'clock a.m. Eastern Standard Time, we have the ISM manufacturing numbers coming out. The manufacturing numbers could cause some volatility, so watch for that as well. So look for some volatility 15 minutes and 30 minutes after market open, and we'll see what this leads to at least moving forward. Besides that, the fear and greed index is currently at greed. That's making up the majority of sentiment right now. On top of that, extreme greed is making up the majority of our momentum because there's still so many buyers stepping in trying to break past our all-time high, at least for the S&P 500. For the puts and call option ratio right now, we're at extreme greed. Greed is making up the majority of sentiment, and this is dipping because of the fact that puts are continuing to be closed and calls are making up the majority of positions. Then, when it comes to volatility, we're still neutral on the VIX because the VIX is not really showing any signs of it bouncing yet as the market remains bullish. So that's what we're seeing at least thus far. So what does this mean for the markets? Now let's just focus on the charts for the rest of this video. As of right now, SPY is on a very, very nice looking uptrend so far. I just want to say this. So we have this key support right here at this 601 area that's near the previous all-time high. We need SPY to lose that for us to turn back down. And then there's going to be a risk of us getting closer to 600 and 598. So if SPY hypothetically loses 601, if 601 fails us, we dip all the way down to 600 and 598. As long as we're above 601, though, we remain more bullish. I do want to mention the 4 hours looking more bullish right now. And when we switch over to the daily time frame, SPY looks more bullish. There's no sign of this thing losing support or rejecting quite yet. So as of right now, with the way that we are moving, this chart is favoring that there could be a small dip in the morning, but it may continue to push as long as we don't lose 601 all the way back up for that 604 target. If that breaks, we're looking for 605 and 607.5 as our potential targets. Right now, SPY is favoring that might try to get closer to 605. So like I said before, there's no sign of this rejecting. We're starting December. This is going to be the first trading day of December 2024. And the odds are still favoring upside a bit more. There's no sign of rejection, so SPY looks more bullish. ES is looking more bullish. Let me just call this out. If we lose 6,040, look for 6,025 at the 20 EMA. If that fails us, this is going to be dipping back down to 6,000. So those are going to be your main supports. Why do I say that? Because check this out. We love to hold these EMAs as our supports. For example, look at the green EMA right over here. This is our support. We bounced off this, bounced off this, bounced off this over and over and over again. So as of right now, we bounced off this during the dip on Friday, and now we're continuing to push higher for that 6,060 mark. If that breaks, we're looking for new all-time highs, and we could be approaching 6,080, then 6,100 is our targets on ES. If we lose 6,025, I will turn back to bearish. We're looking for 6,000 as our target. As of right now, the chart favors upside. It's bouncing off its EMAs. There's no sign of rejection, and it's favoring that it wants to go up to about 6,080. So that favors the upside for tomorrow. For Nvidia, I'm going to talk about Nvidia, then the QQQ. Nvidia got this big rejection. It was dumping really hard, especially after all the chip news that was coming out and after earnings came out. However, that's the only reason that happens because earnings were good, but not really as great as what investors really wanted because we have very, very high expectations for Nvidia. So with all the chip news that came out, it's starting to kind of like slow down now. And I just want to mention that there's a good chance that this is trying to turn on the 4-hour time frame. We're going to be looking for a small dip on Monday, back down towards like 137 or so. And I think that as long as we try to reclaim 138 as time goes on, as long as we hold above 138 and close above that on a 4-hour basis, this is favoring 140.5 and eventually 142.5. So I think we're favoring 140 and 142 as long as we don't lose 138. There might be a small dip below 138, but I think what's going to happen is we're going to try to reclaim that. So watch that very carefully. If 137.5 fails us, we're looking for 135.9 as our main support, followed by 134 and then 132. I think Nvidia dips a bit, then tries to bounce. As long as we hold above 138 as time goes on, we're looking for 140.5 and 142 as our targets. We remain more bullish. Also, Apple, I'm going to talk about Apple real quick. Then I'll talk about the QQQ afterwards. Apple's very bullish right now. It's just continuing to break out. I need this to lose 233.8. If we lose that, this dips down to 230. So watch 235 and then 233 is the main supports. If those fail us, we're looking for 230.9. As of right now, we're on a very, very strong uptrend. So the chart is favoring the 240 targets. I presume we're just going to continue to uptrend very, very nicely. And we could be on our way for that 240 area as long as we manage to break past 238. I think the odds favor upside, so keep that in mind, guys. Right now, we're looking more bullish. All right, so with Apple still favoring upside alongside Nvidia, that's going to have somewhat of an effect on Nvidia. At least they're going to use that as an excuse to, I'm sorry, not Nvidia, the QQQ. It's going to most likely affect the QQQ. So I think there's a good chance this is going to continue to push as well. So if the QQQ rejects and we end up losing support right here at this 508 area, I'm going to be looking for 507 and 505 as the main supports. If 505 fails us, this is going to be dipping more. So just keep that in mind just in case. As of right now, however, every time it's hitting these EMAs or getting near them, it just gets bought back up, gets bought back up. So it's favoring that it wants to go up to about this 512.5 area. So look for a little bit of a dip upon opening a test of 510. If that breaks, looking for 512.5, then eventually 516 is our targets as the chart remains bullish. So I think that this chart is favoring upside. There's no sign of us losing 505 yet. If we lose 507 and 505, I will turn bearish, but we haven't done that yet and we're favoring upside instead. So I'm only calling out those levels just so you guys are prepared in case something happens. So it's always good to know your support and demand levels, your supply and demand levels. So I think this is favoring upside for 512.5 or above, and the QQQ is looking more bullish to me. For Tesla, we're looking bullish on the 4-hour. I think that we have the main support at 340. If we lose 340, we look for 332. As of right now, what I think is going to happen is we like to dip a bit in the mornings and start pushing, and this imbalance is going to push us to about 353 and then 360 as long as we hold above 340. Look for a dip and then a push all the way up to 353, and I think the odds favor upside for a nice cup and handle like structure. As long as Tesla does not lose 332, we are favoring upside. So the chart's going to likely try to push for 353 tomorrow, if not above, and we're looking bullish on the 4 hours. So as of right now, I do favor upside for Tesla. For Bitcoin, we are holding our supports. Notice that we touched our 50 EMA, we bounced, came down to the 20 bounce, hit the 50 EMA, then bounced. We're continuing to hold these supports. If we lose 96,632, look for 95,889 as the next support. If that fails us, we're looking for 94,660 flat. As long as we are above these EMAs, however, especially tomorrow if we hold above that, I think we easily go back up to about 98,000 or above, and the chart still favors upside with an inverse head and shoulders like structure. So right now, I think that Bitcoin is going to likely consolidate and start pushing for 98,000 plus as we remain more bullish. For other factors out there, we have NQ, which looks more bullish. As long as we don't lose 20,869, we're favoring a push for about 21,000. If that breaks, we're looking for 21,100. So right now, NQ looks more bullish, and I think we're trying to get bought back up here. 21,100 is going to be our next potential target. For Netflix, Netflix is looking more bullish, at least on the 4 hour. If you lose 878, we're looking for a dip back down towards essentially 870. I think the odds do favor this kind of dipping a little bit before it tries to continue to push. There might be a test of about 880 to 878, a little bit of a dip here. Then it could try to bounce and fill this imbalance, taking us back up to 900. Might be a small dip, then a bounce as the most likely possibility. So please keep that in mind as you remain more bullish. A dip and a bounce is likely coming. For MSTR, for those who are interested, we have a nice inverse head and shoulders like structure that's developing. I just don't want to see it close below 380. As long as it does not close below 380, this is favoring that it wants to bounce a bit. So it might consolidate a little bit to start pushing back up for about 408. If that breaks, we could be on our way for 420, then eventually 440. If we manage to close above our key EMAs at 396, I think this will favor a little bit more upside. So let's hope that ends up being the case. My guts tells me this will likely dip a little bit, then try to bounce and push up for that 420 target and eventually 440 as it looks a little bit more bullish. For Celsius, we're doing a decent job at trying to hold above 28.4. As long as we don't end up losing that support, I think this is going to be favoring a little bit more upside. So just keep that in mind, guys, as we're doing a good job at holding up thus far. So I presume what's going to happen is we hold above our 1520 EMAs. This might be on its way back up for about 29.5. As long as we don't lose 27.5, I favor a push for 29 or even above. I say that because we are starting to respect an uptrend. We broke this structure right here. We broke out here, came back down. Now we're trying to break here. So it could attempt to push higher from this point on as the chart favors upside. For Supermicro, we're looking a little bit weaker compared to the markets. We need to hold above 33.26. Otherwise, there's going to be a risk of us coming back down to about 30.77. We'll see if we bounce off that or not. I do believe that after so much upside that it got, I think that there's going to be a risk of a little bit more downside. This might be retesting 30.7. Let's hope we get a bounce off that or not. Let's hope we get a bounce, excuse me. If it doesn't, it's not going to be the best of signs. But I think that there's going to be a test of 30.7. We'll see how it reacts to that. So just keep that in mind. For others out there, such as Palantir, Palantir remains bullish as it's respecting its 20 EMA very, very nicely. You need to lose 65.24 to turn back down. If that fails us, we easily come back down towards 63 flat if we lose 65.24. As long as we're above that, though, this could be favoring 68 plus. So I think the odds are favoring a little bit of a dip to about the 65 and a push higher for 68, and eventually it might be pushing closer to about 70. So I favor upside for essentially 68 and eventually 70. I think there's a very, very good chance this is going to continue to push. Look for a dip and a bounce, and 68 plus will likely be coming. We'll have to see how it goes from there. For Rivian, Rivian is looking more bullish as it's on a very, very nice uptrend. If you zoom out, it's still technically uptrending. But the problem with Rivian is the fact that as we hit to 12.5 to 13, it's a very, very tough resistance. It rejects here, rejects, rejects. There's a very, very good chance this is going to dip a little bit before it tries to bounce again. But I just want to say I see a test of about 11.67 likely coming. It got so much upside the last couple of days, so it wouldn't necessarily be a surprise. 11.67 is likely coming. We'll see if we bounce off that or not, so just keep that in mind. For SoFi, we're doing a good job at holding it, but I do see an issue. The fact that we are at some tough resistance around this 16.5 area. I'm starting to consolidate here, so I want to see it hold above 16.5 plus to hit 16.8. But notice that it is hitting some tough resistance, and this is turning into kind of like a bearish divergence. So there is a risk of it kind of dipping closer to about 16 before it tries to bounce again. Might be a small dip here, offer a small reversal back down to 16 before it tries to bounce. So look for a small dip before anything else. I also think that the IWM is completely range bound between 244 and 239-ish. So I think what's going to happen is we consolidate. We might actually see a test of this 20 EMA around 240. So it might see a little bit of a dip and some consolidation before it tries to bounce. As long as we don't lose 240, 239 to 240, that range. As long as that does not break, I think there's a good chance we consolidate for a bit, retest our 20 EMA at 240, then we eventually bounce and start breaking out for 244 plus. I find that to be the most likely possibility, so keep that in mind, guys. We might consolidate a bit, test 240, and then try to bounce, so just see how it goes. For AMD, AMD is on a bit of a downtrend. And what I mean is, when you look at this, we had a high here. We came down, made a lower high, came down, made a lower high, came down, made a lower high, came down. It's continuing to downtrend, but this support is going to be very important. There's going to be a big test coming to AMD right over here. So we'll have to see how well we can hold very close to these lower 330s. Otherwise, the trend is still a little bit more bearish. So I think that because we got this nice green bar right here, this could be signaling an attempt to bounce off this key support, despite the fact that it's been on a downtrend. If it manages to reclaim 138, we're looking for 140 as our target, then 142. And if it loses to 136, we're looking for essentially 133.8 as our target. I think that because we're at this tough resistance, there's going to be a small dip coming. But as long as you can make a higher low compared to this low because of this green bar, it might be a dip and a bounce that's coming right over here. Because especially because the PPO is building some strength and we have a bullish divergence. So we might see something like this where it dips a little bit more, grabs liquidity one more time around this 135 area. But if we can make a higher low compared to 133, this could be a sign that it's trying to base. It's going to be trying to push back up to 140. So I think it might be on its way to 140, might be a small dip coming first, but keep that in mind for AMD. This could show some signs of reversal if we hold it very well. ARM is also trying to follow a lot of the chip stocks right now. As long as it does not lose 130, this looks like it's going to be retesting 135.8. And if that breaks, we're looking for essentially 140. So we had a low here, we came back up, made a higher low, and we could be pushing for 135.8. If that breaks, we're looking for essentially 139.93 as the most likely possibility. So I'm favoring that this might be trying to break past 136 and eventually hitting 139.93 as the most likely possibilities. I think ARM has some more upside potential. For a coin, we're completely range bound between this 330 area and about this the 286 areas, kind of going back and forth and back and forth. Now, the problem with this is that for the last couple of days, it's been completely range bound. As we hit the 290 area, we like to bounce on coin. As we hit 314-ish, we'd like to reject. So right now, I do anticipate it's going to dip a little bit more. It's about that 290 area. The last three times we hit this, we did bounce off that. So we could be hitting 290, then bouncing back up to 303. That's a little bit more probable, but make sure you watch that support just to be safe. We need to bounce off that 290 area to try to get back up to 303. If we get that bounce and we manage to reclaim 296, I do expect 303.8 or above. But if we can't bounce and reclaim 296, if we fail at 290 and start continuing to fall, I will turn more bearish. I'm going to be looking for a target of about that, the 278 area. So I hope that's as clear as possible. We're range bound on coin. We need to bounce off 290 to, make our way back up. If we get that bounce, a dip and a bounce, we're looking for a target of 303.8, then eventually the 310 area. So watch and see if we get that bounce. Amazon looks more bullish as it's holding above its key EMAs. As long as 205 does not fail, we favor upside. And this chart looks like it wants to go all the way up to about that 210 area. If not, it's 212.5. So just keep that in mind. Amazon remains more bullish and it's favoring upside right now for the 210 targets. Meta looks more bullish as long as it does not lose 568. We're favoring a pushback up for 580 or above. So keep that in mind. For Microsoft, we're looking more decent. We're holding supports very nicely as long as you don't lose 420. This chart is favoring 425 or above. Google's just consolidating between 169 and like 171, being stuck in the 170 range. I think that's the chart favors a small dip tomorrow. It's about like the 169 area before it tries to bounce again. But it's been consolidating for the past 2 days. If there is a small dip, it could try to rebound and try to reclaim 170.8. If that's the case, we're looking for essentially 172.53, then eventually 175. I expect some consolidation in the 170 area, then we could attempt to rebound. So give this the time it needs. For DJT, we're completely range bound right here. If we can't hold above 30.7, I think the odds are favoring us trying to push up for about 33. So I think that because we had a low here, we came up, made a higher low, and made another higher low. This is favoring a pushback up for the 33 area. I think that DJT has potential, so give this more time to develop, and we'll see what ends up happening from here. For the VIX, we are looking a little bit more bearish right now. I think there's a good chance we start dipping closer to about the 13 flat area. I also want to call out that on the VIX, when you zoom out, you could see that we're at the support at 13.5. If it doesn't hold here, we could be on our way all the way down to like the 12s. So that looks bearish. It's continuing to reject. There's no sign of us getting back up of 15.5 yet. So that makes me think the market's favoring upside for now as well. The 10 year is also dipping after what the Fed has said. Don't forget we have Jerome Powell giving a speech on Wednesday. I'll talk more about that later on. But this favors a little bit of a dip, which tends to be bullish for the markets. The dollar has also been downtrending as that tends to be bullish for the markets as well. So, if the dollar does not reclaim 106, we do favor slowly making our way down to 105.2. If 105.2 comes, then we'll have to see what happens after that. But just know the market remains more bullish as we're starting to see other indicators like the VIX and the dollar looking bearish. So far, the bulls have a bigger edge. Now, Anything could happen in the markets. That's why you always want to know the supply and demand, what levels to watch for. But just know right now the charts favor upside. With that being said, I thank you all so much for listening. Please have a great rest of your weekend. Watch some football and have some fun. I'll see you guys very, very soon on the next one. Thank you again and peace out.